Noises?
Oh,
Noises?
noises.
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 Okay.
Nicely,
Voices.
nicely.
What?
You're rolling.
Oh,
Oh, we are?
okay.
Oh,
We're
well,
live.
That was an important
Somebody
conversation.
All right.
Coming to you asynchronously from Southwest Washington, it's the RATScast. My name is Jeffrey Ritchie. I'm the Dean of Science for the Religion of Art, Theater, and Science. Joining me today are...
Chloe Wheeler, Deputy of Climate Change.
Johnny Appleseed, Deputy of Bullshit.
Okay, Johnny.
And John Eric Hagstead, the arbiter of the religion of art, theater, and science.
And what's on the agenda today, guys? What are we going to talk about?
I thought I would bring up a conversation that I engaged in recently on Facebook. It wasn't bad, but lately I just have not had the energy to comment on anything. But in this one group I am in, somebody brought up climate change, and I'm trying to go back to the post. I don't necessarily want to read it word for word, but just to make sure that I'm not going to miss anything. Essentially, the guy said he's willing to take drastic action today in his life to do everything possible to combat climate change, but will anybody else? And if nobody else will, should he bother? So I chimed into that saying, I totally understand that our modern society can't stop this metaphorical clock, but I do think there are things we can all do to slow down the effects. And, yes, there's only so much we as individuals can do. The onus is on the corporations that, emit 70% of the emissions to make those drastic changes. But, there are small wins in what we can do individually. And unfortunately, I don't think I convinced this person. And then somebody chimed in saying, look up Tragedy of the Commons, which was a little irritating because why would you presume that I don't know what that term means?
Okay.
But, he mansplains it to me, right?
Oh,
and, it's up to the
now you have it
leaders.
straight?
Yeah, it's up to the elected leaders. We need to elect good leaders. It's like, okay, well... let's take a look at our current leaders. How many of them are not taking corporate donations? Very few.
Very few. You've got
Very
the
few.
squad. You've got those people who were kind of under the Justice Democrats banner who, signed the pledge not to take any corporate or PAC money and whatnot. But, most of the people who are sitting in elective office right now are there because, companies and people with a lot of money gave them money.
Mm-hmm. So, I personally don't have a whole lot of faith in our elected leaders. I do see the point in getting more progressive people elected, which kind of brings up, what I mentioned before we started rolling. It's obvious that the answer is for people such as ourselves to run, but, one, it's a huge undertaking. I don't think I have thick enough skin to deal with, like I mentioned, death threats that would be coming my way. It's just such a real potential of like violence, being imposed on me, especially like running as a woman. I feel, the threat is there for anybody. But yeah, so I mean, what is the answer? Because if we're going to use this excuse of Tragedy of the Commons, which it just in and of itself, it like feeds into that whole concept, if not everybody else is going to do it, why should I? How do we want to go down?
Thing, when you look at when things come down as like a universally good idea, even if we have to be told to, it makes a difference. All you have to do is look at the difference in car accident fatalities before and after seatbelts were mandatory, and it'll show you right there that enough people change the behavior that it makes a significant difference over the population. So if we can, of course, not all of us are privileged enough to be able to buy an electric car or live close enough to work where we can just bicycle or walk or, make those kinds of personal impacts. And, I noticed that you don't have solar panels on your roof. Yeah, it's probably a little cost prohibitive still, right?
I'm nodding my head, yes.
So the corporations need to change their behavior. How do they change their behavior? Well, the only way to do it is through regulation. If you don't regulate them, it's shown time and time again. You remove a regulation, they start doing that thing. And that's the way it is. So.
Mm-hmm. It just seems to be this I don't know, negative cycle of, some type of regulation or mandate needs to be put on the corporations. But in order to do that, the legislation needs to be passed. And in order to do that, people need to be sitting in those positions in order to vote on that. In order to do that, we have to make campaigns publicly funded and prohibit corporations from donating. But in order to do that, we need to pass legislation.
Which means we got to get those people elected. So maybe if you can't run for office, maybe you can work on a campaign for somebody who shares your progressive ideals, somebody who is, on the right side of the issue. Now, we keep getting sold these soft leaders by the corporate establishment that, okay, well, maybe we just do a half measure here, and this person who supports, like, some kind of a hybrid, but not a full measure on something or whatnot. It's like, it's progress. We got to move the clock slowly or whatever. And it's like, no, we actually need transformational leadership at this time. Transformational leadership encounters the most resistance, but, like you said, the clock is going. We can't stop it.
Right, we're already so far behind the game in so many aspects of our society, but really, largely climate change, right? If we don't move 0 to 100 as fast as we can, then we're not really working for the betterment of our future, or for the future of those that follow us, because we're taking our sweet-ass time.
That was the sentiment all through the 90s, right? When I was in high school was, what we need to do is take our foot off the accelerator because we're headed for a cliff, right? Okay, at what point do we apply the brake and turn the steering wheel?
Right, yeah.
Right, and maybe what you said just there is kind of what the OP was saying. He's ready to make these changes, but it seems from what I understood of his comments that, he's just one of 9 billion people, and, if his individual actions aren't going to make the difference and we can't count on everybody to get on the same page, then what's the point? And I think my answer, which maybe I didn't communicate clearly enough, is just, I think it comes down to your own conscience at the end of the day, and how you live with yourself or don't. I don't want to go down in history as being somebody who did nothing, so I'm doing what I can, realizing that there is so much more action that I could be taking, particularly when it comes to being involved in campaigns. But yeah, I just don't want to go down as somebody who did nothing, but so that I'm not talking out of both sides of my mouth when it comes to, that fight or flight. I tend to be more of a flight person. So, if things start to get really hairy here in the United States, I don't really know if I'll have the courage to, potentially, dedicate my entire life. I don't know. I mean, maybe it'll be something that occurs or becomes more clear when it gets to be in the actual moment. But yeah, it's tough because when it comes to climate change, that answer to me is so obvious that I'm just still going to do what I can, but then actually translating that to other issues, our unraveling democracy being the main one that I'm thinking of. Am I actually going to be able to apply that same notion? And hopefully we'll never be in situations where our life is truly in danger. But when I think of running for an office, that, puts me there.
Well, especially what we've seen over the last year with political demonstrations and what people are willing to do, and up to and including an armed insurrection at the Capitol building. That's pretty frightening.
And
they still think they're patriots. That's the crazy thing. They tried to overthrow our democracy, but they still think they're the ones who are the patriots.
Well, that's kind of how the Taliban sees themselves in Afghanistan.
Yep. The similarities are striking.
So, can we offer up some hope?
I do think so. On my journey to living more sustainably, which I am still in the thick of, I'm finding that it's best to just focus on one thing at a time and to experience that small win and making that one choice that you'll continue to make, presumably for the rest of your life, to make a difference. And that could be many, many things. I think the overwhelming consensus of what I read online is starting with reusable water bottles and reusable coffee mugs, instead of just buying single use and disposing, just taking those extra few minutes to prepare your own and, reuse those containers. Driving electric, which of course, as you mentioned, is a privilege. We were able to make it work financially, mainly because he sold his other car. But that will make a huge difference over time. Us starting our own garden, which I personally am hoping will turn into a co-op. What's that? Oh, the coop. I'm sorry. He also tortured himself by watching videos about the Z3 coupe.
I do not watch videos about the coupe. I watch videos about the convertible. Okay. Not the coupe.
But the coupe was in there, so fresh feelings today. Fresh feelings. But yeah, I do hope that this will become a co-op garden, and that maybe people of the rats community at least will be able to take advantage of that. Growing one's own food is rewarding in and of itself. And
we just harvested potatoes yesterday.
Yeah, we got almost 3 pounds, I think.
Yep, over 3 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that was just 2 metal containers. I don't really know what the diameter of those were, like 2 feet maybe, 3 feet.
Yeah, 2.
Mm-hmm. And not entirely deep. So that was pretty exciting. What else? What else is there to be excited about in what we're doing around here?
Well, we do live in an area that, despite the overwhelming pressure to try to put in an additional coal transfer station and a bulk terminal that would handle methanol, we shut those down through the activities of local citizens who came out and met with public officials and talked about how we don't want it here. And then, of course, through the courts, finding that the EISs just weren't up to par.
Mm-hmm. What's an EIS?
Oh, that would be an environmental impact statement,
Thanks.
which is something that's required for the permitting process of doing anything at the port.
Yeah, so they found that it was pretty bad for the local waterways and all the local fish and all the animals that lived in the area to have not just the ships coming in, but also the trains along the waterways, basically just spewing stuff out along the way.
Yeah, and I think the last thing that got turned over is because they failed to take into account the global impact of those things and
of shipping the coal to China, and then what does China do once they have the coal? They use it. Oh, they didn't factor that part into the assessment either. Yeah. No, it was and the cancer risks along the trackway for everyone living here just wasn't that bad. Come on, or the rise in cancer risk. Jeez. Anyway, that's old news, but we can move on.
Yeah, but I mean,
a spin-off of that, which is irritating, but it kind of shows you where we're at locally, is when we got involved. The president of the local Democratic chapter was the lobbyist for the coal industry that was trying to bring in the plant to the area. So, and just overall, we've had other run-ins too, where the whole disorganization of the local Democratic Party is really hurting our local area. There's no organization, there's no attempt to build a larger coalition of younger people with progressive ideas, because
and
they are more
interpersonal issues too.
Right.
So
well, there's a few personalities locally that are kind of big spiders in the political web, and they're still sort of shoveling out the idea of the corporate democracy and sort of those soft candidates and soft policies.
Right. Which I don't understand how any Democrat could be in this environment thinking that centrism is the way forward. Right? We should kowtow to the establishment because they have the money and the power, and
They've
they're
been
the ones
dragging
that
me
fund
over
the
to the window
campaigns.
to the right since I was old enough to understand the news. And no, we don't need to continue to make concessions. They're just going to step back and draw another line. And I don't want to play that way. If they're
Right.
going to do that, I'm going to go over here and work without them.
Right. So, I think, and I understand that RATS can't be a political organization. That's not what we were intended to be. That's not what we are. We're a religion. But, perhaps people that are hearing this, that are in the RATS community, might want to consider, some activism that would be entirely separate from RATS, but just so that we could get, hopefully more progressive people elected here locally, because, that phrase think globally, act locally. And maybe we'll be able to work more with, those that are currently volunteering their time with the local democratic organizations. Maybe relationships can be developed, and I think that is something hopeful to at least want.
Let me just give one more example because it's so current. Yesterday was the anniversary of Martin Luther King's "I Had a Dream" speech, and there was a big march on Washington, right? And the Democrats were trying to make a big deal out of it. Did you hear about it?
For a
From-
second. Yeah.
So, for a 2nd, I heard about it on Thursday, and I follow the news pretty damn religiously, like YouTube and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't hear anything about a march on Washington. Okay, that's part of it, but shouldn't you also be focusing on local areas too?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
But,
if voting rights are such a big deal, why wasn't it a national thing to bring people out on the streets to ensure a nice motorcycle goes by, that our democracy has a chance for the future?
I mean, COVID might be a part of there not being any organizing, at least locally here, but, I feel just as guilty for not having been aware of it. I should have been aware of the date as a date in history in general. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't until I think the day of yesterday, right, that it was even on my radar. I've, of course, heard of March on Washington before, but I don't know, for whatever reason with me.
Have you been to D.C.?
I have.
I don't think I have.
They put an engraved brick, or they engraved the brick on the ground where he stood giving that speech, marking the date and whatnot. So you can stand on that spot and look out over the mall. It's just awe-inspiring.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, I mean, I feel ashamed that it wasn't on my radar because, we live together. We watch the same amount of news. I should have been more aware. And yeah, we absolutely could have organized something ourselves, but, COVID is still a concern even with outdoor gatherings right now. So,
Mm-hmm. This Delta variant's been a game changer. Speaking of, one of the things that I think that we do bring as the religion of art, theater, and science is our impact on the culture, right? So people, people who join us and they, agree to the tenets that we've laid forth, and then as people hear us have conversations and our members have conversations with families and friends and whatnot, there's a rippling effect that works at the level of changing culture. And boy, do we live in an area where the culture needs changing. Just this week, the only hospital in town is opening an overflow tent in the parking lot because cases are so high here. And vaccination is about 50%?
If it's up that high, I'd be surprised.
I think it is about around 50%.
Okay,
yeah, I
that's
think
higher
right
than last
around
time I
there.
saw.
There have been increases in vaccinations, but the reporting is spotty. So, when I see those daily updates, some days it will say 0 new vaccination shots administered, and then other days it'll be 300 plus. So I think that is more so just lagging in reporting data. But yeah, I mean, they are not getting vaccinated soon enough. They should have been vaccinated months ago, right?
There's a strong sentiment about it around here. And And the goalpost keeps moving, right? So people are like, well, that's not approved by the FDA, emergency use. It's still experimental. Okay, well, it's got the full approval now. Okay, well, we still don't know this or that or whatever. Okay, well, all right. Well, when are you going to put that sign down and go, okay, the vaccine's safe. Everybody says it's safe. Let's take it. Meanwhile, we're also one of the areas where the farm supply stores have had to put warning signs out on the shelves
Ivermectin.
to tell
No.
people not to take ivermectin.
Really? Even here?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. The people who are looking at liberals and shouting sheeple are the ones taking medication for sheep. You
The
can't have
irony
any
is-
sympathy for these people. You are. I'm more, and maybe we can talk about this.
Let me tell you this. I saw a doctor giving a speech to a congressional committee about ivermectin, and he had me convinced. He did. He talked about the studies and the data that they did, and I was thinking, wow, this is exciting. This is a game changer. This can make a difference in COVID, right? Now, is the first thing that I did start spreading his video around? No. The first thing I did was try to find other doctors who were saying the same thing. And guess what? There weren't any. They were all saying, yeah, maybe it could, possibly with the ACE receptor and stuff, but the side effects of it are way worse.
And wasn't there also a lack of distinction between the one that is intended for humans, that is FDA, graded, whatever, but must be prescribed by a doctor, versus the stuff that you can get on the shelf for livestock?
What is it, Giardia or malaria? I don't know what it treats, but it's some kind of a parasite. They give it to you in the correct dose to treat that parasite in your human body.
Right, prescribed,
right?
Yeah.
Now they give that shit to cows by the just syringe full, to clear worms out of their intestinal tract so that we can make good sausage, right?
Yeah. So I think I'm a little bit more, how do you want to say, extreme in my view of anti-vax people. So maybe we could dive into that. Because like the Alabama governor said, we should start blaming the unvaccinated and the anti-mask. Because it is essentially at this point...
The Alabama governor said that?
That was a few weeks ago. Oh.
She was pretty defensive because she got put on the spot by the press.
So at what point do we start blaming them? At what point does common scientific knowledge become domestic terrorism? Because these people are costing more American lives than every single terrorist attack since pick a number, forever. More people have died in America because of anti-maskers and anti-vaxxers than at any other time other than the Civil War and World War II.
We've got, you're right.
And when we wiped out Native Americans across our country.
We're coming up on 750,000 right now.
Yeah.
Right? That have died from COVID.
But
not all of those were when we had a vaccine.
Right.
So that number should, the number that's accountable for the anti-vaxxers, anti-maskers isn't all of the deaths during COVID. It's all of the deaths
following availability of vaccine.
Availability plus 3 months or whatever it would take to theoretically vaccinate the entire country.
Get your first and your second shot together.
So at what point do we start tallying up American deaths and attributing them not to COVID, but to anti-vaxxers and anti-mask domestic terrorists who are putting their communities, our families, our loved ones, in danger every time they go into a supermarket without a mask and they haven't been vaxxed?
Well, I see how you're trying to get to the criterion there of
domestic terrorism.
Doing something dangerous and costing lives in order to affect a political message, which is I don't wanna, right? And that's terrorism. However, in order for that to work, our laws about intentionally spreading a communicable disease would have to get so robust and include things like refusal to wear a mask during a mandate and whatnot. And that would have to be federal too, because we try to implement that at the state level. You see what's happening at the state level. You got different things everywhere. You have a governor in Texas who's trying to stop local school boards from making mask mandates for children.
Yeah,
And then he gets COVID.
Yeah, just idiots, you know. So that goes to a larger point. How long do we allow science deniers and racists to hold important elected...
It's a bit of a non sequitur, but okay.
Well, not really, right? Because it's the same issue. It's these people who deny our shared reality that hold very important positions in our society who are endangering the lives of all of us.
I'm not saying that they aren't the same people, but that was a jump.
Well, sure, yeah. But ultimately it leads to that question.
Yeah.
Why are these people getting into these positions?
We know that there is systemic, institutionalized racism. It's culturally institutionalized. There are still biases that we all have in us that have been socialized into us without our knowledge and permission that we're trying to root out. Now, I think we're probably all at a point where we've done like 99% of that work, but every now and then there's going to be something where we go, oh, there it is.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right?
we catch ourselves, and oh my gosh, perfect example. I commented on a post that said something to the effect of name a song that reminds you of your dad, and I comment Rock the Casbah, and then Jeff reacts to it, and then I start thinking, oh no, is this song actually racist? So I take a quick glance at the lyrics, and I'm like, oh my gosh, these terms, I can't even remember what they were. So I send him this like apologetic message, and then he says to read like the Google bio on it, or Wikipedia bio on it, which, you know, I should have theoretically already done. So then I read about how it's like, you know, social commentary on the theocracy that like took place in the Middle East, or I mean, it still takes place in the Middle East. Yeah. But yeah, so right, we're still in the process of identifying those.
Yeah, figuring out, you know, what's a socio-political message and what was just wrong and should be erased from every copy of the Dukes of Hazzard, right? You know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I grew up watching Dukes of Hazzard.
Yeah.
Yep. I didn't know anything about that symbol.
I had no idea, but I know how people feel about that symbol today. People who are very close to me, and they've made it clear in no uncertain terms. No matter what anybody tells you about history or culture, the history and culture they celebrate is slavery.
Yeah. Well, there's no other way to look at it, because that symbol that's most associated as the Confederate flag is not the Confederate flag.
Of course.
It's the battle flag of the Northern Virginia Army. The Confederate flag was mostly white with a red stripe on the very end of it, for the most part. That was the flag that they used for the most part.
Which is appropriate, because it looks a lot like a surrender flag.
Well, and that's why they used it. It was actually a tactic on the battlefield to lure Union Army up into thinking they were surrendering, and then when they got close enough, they would slaughter them.
Okay, so that's
Crazy.
a war crime now against the Geneva Convention, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but not back then.
To feign surrender.
Yeah. But they were Southerners. They were Southerners trying to maintain their racism and maintain slavery. Mm-hmm. So what do you think they're going to use? Honorable tactics? No. Do we see MAGA red hats use honorable tactics in the political battlefront? No. There's no honor with these people. They're liars. They're cheats. They're thieves. They're crooks. Mm-hmm. Almost every single one of them. And we're seeing the honest ones step up right now. You don't think there's a significant
faction of folks who are just simply victims of bad ideas?
I do.
Yes.
Okay.
If they never had the education, if they were raised religiously, if they fell into the, you know, trenches of like dark web, far right, conspiracy theories, then yes, I do see them as victims, and I, you know, and I can't comprehend it, but their reality is that that's their truth.
Yeah. Now, you know, and their reality is, even though it's delusional, it doesn't excuse their behaviors. Because, you know, your freedom to move your arm ends at the end of my nose, right? So, you know, once they take up arms and do things that are treasonous, then...
Yeah, the fact that we haven't charged people with treason that have that stormed the Capitol on 1/6 is beyond me.
Especially if that whole phrase of just following orders was proven to not be an excuse of war crime.
Well, isn't that what we decided in Nuremberg?
Right.
Yeah. So why do we have to relitigate history that we've already established?
Yeah, we don't
That's what I'm
learn from
confused
history,
about.
and
Yeah,
therefore we are
kept
doomed to
telling
repeat
me
it.
my whole life that if you didn't know history, you were doomed to repeat it. But what happens if you do know history and you see it repeating itself?
But how much do we actually know? Because that's the thing that blows my mind still to this day, is how so many people could have gone through a public school system and have not actually learned and retained the same amount of base knowledge of facts and history,
And what was the curriculum being taught
Mm-hmm.
in those schools, and how
Right.
much were certain things emphasized or not emphasized?
I definitely took for granted that people had the same educational experience that I did, and that's just absolutely not the case. But it's just astounding to see so many uneducated people throughout the country. It's sad. I mean, we're supposed to be the greatest country, and we're full of fucking idiots.
Yeah, and that's the sad fact. In the theater, there was a long-established thing about not undervaluing your audience, not underrating, not what is that? What am I going for? Not
Not mine.
not undermining. Don't
Patronizing.
yeah, don't play down to them. Think that they are just as smart as you. And I think what we've figured out is that
They're not.
they're not. They're not. And there needs to be, and maybe the people going to the theater have a higher IQ, but that's not necessarily true, especially when it comes to musicals. Especially when it comes to audiences and musicals.
Well, and especially if it's community theater too, right? Because these are just people that just want to be part of the process, and then it's their family and friends that
Something
are
for the
coming to
kids
see
to do.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Theater kid.
So at some point we need to really evaluate, and that's why I brought up we need to come up with some type of mechanism, some type of test to ensure that our political leaders, those who actually gain access to being eligible to hold elected office, they have to pass some sort of test to ensure that they don't think the planet is 6,000 years old and that humans and dinosaurs shared the earth. They must understand that gravity is real, right? There needs
Right.
to be some base minimum to ensure that those elected officials who are in charge of our future, in charge of our safety, share our reality.
And that's difficult in today's world, because for the last 30 years, definitely since about 1999, when that memo leaked about the wedge strategy, they have been working very hard to focus on wedge issues in order to put people of evangelical belief into positions of power. And it's been growing and they've been working hard at it, and you see it now. So now we've got somebody sitting in Congress who thinks it's okay to mock the suffering of the Jews because she has to put a mask on.
It's the fact that anti-Semitic racists and potential terrorists, if they did indeed give them a tour of the Capitol before they stormed it, are still in Congress, is only a testament to how feckless our democratic establishment is.
Well, just think about the double standard that's applied. She is a Republican and a Christian and a white person, and she gets to get away with doing that and then make a half-assed public apology later. Can you imagine what would have happened if Ilhan
Obama.
Omar?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. It's fucked.
Well, it just proves how racist our country is, right? I mean, I think Trump really showed us how racist our country is, and how much more pervasive the racism is than any of us really thought it was before Trump. I mean, I have a story of my uncle warning me about this in high school. I think I've told it a few times, so I'll skip it now. But we need to start paying attention to that rise of racism because it's not going away. It became more prevalent with Obama. It started to grow. With Trump, it became acceptable. And now with Biden, we're seeing racists, and let's not confuse them. They're anti-mask, they're anti-vaccine, but there are also those who have Confederate flags up on their bedroom walls. They're the same people. Same group of
Yeah,
people.
they check
Maybe
all
not
the same
everyone in
boxes.
that group, but it's the same type of person, right? The right-wing, QAnon-believing, crazy person that might come to your local school board and shoot it up because they don't want to protect their children. So
Well,
at
so
what
far
point
they've
do we
only
call
stripped
them
down to their
domestic
skivvies,
terrorists?
So that's
Because they're the ones going to schools and shooting them up. They're the ones putting our entire communities in danger because they don't want to wear a mask on their face. Oh no, what a huge problem a mask on your face is. Do you wear glasses?
all the time.
Glasses are way more annoying than a mask, in my opinion, and I used to wear glasses before I got LASIK.
And glasses plus the mask is just...
Hey,
Not cool.
you got to know your techniques,
Right.
otherwise you're gonna fall.
The mask has to go
Really?
under the frame.
So
Well, I've
the
got
fact
nose
that these
pad, so I rest it
patriots,
on
I say in
the
quotation
paper
marks,
itself, and-
are complaining about wearing masks to protect their community, to protect their family and loved
Hey, I got a
ones,
funny story about masks.
is disgusting.
Well, actually, it's not.
And
all
we
that
need to
funny.
start calling them domestic terrorists.
When my
like
son
they
was
are.
born, Kia was in hard labor for 4.5 hours. And if you know what hard labor is, that's when every 2 minutes you have to take a couple of deep breaths, hold your breath, and push, 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 and then blow it out and suck in again and hold your breath and push, push, push. Every 2 minutes for 4.5 hours with a mask over her face. She's fine, so's the baby.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they still say they can't breathe oxygen through their mask. I mean, because they don't believe in science, and yet we're letting them influence our communities to the point where they're going to kill 1 million plus of Americans. Wait until this winter. Look at the surge right now during the summer. Everyone's outside.
It's as bad as it was last winter.
And last winter was the bad part. And I've said this for the whole time, and Chloe can nod her head or whatever. We're about to see the second wave. People think we're in wave 3 or 4 or whatever. No. The second wave is the second year. Look at the pandemic in 2018. Look at the numbers.
1918.
Look, thank you. If we pay attention to the past, we can apply that to our current and to our future.
Oh,
and
you
the
mean
fact that
learning
our
from our
politicians aren't
experience?
applying what we know to ensure that our future stands a chance is mystifying to me. And it's a dangerous thing that we allow these people to maintain control.
And it's pretty terrible that a part of me hopes that they will just remove themselves from the gene pool.
Well, you see, there's going to be some attrition. You know, I made a dire prediction the other day. I said I think a lot of Republicans are going to lose in 2024 because their voters are dead. The problem is that they're going to take other people with them.
Yeah.
Right, of course, that is the terrible thing. But at the same time, now that the vaccine is available, anybody who is not taking that step to protect themselves must acknowledge the potential of them dying and accept it.
Mm-hmm.
And if they want to die on that hill, they can.
I didn't want to get a shot because I thought it was experimental. Did you read that article from the doctor who wrote that up a letter about he asked the patient, why did you not get the vaccine? And he says, yeah, it was experimental. And he says, okay, well, I'm about to treat you with Regeneron, which is also experimental and also not FDA approved. But it's the only choice we have. Do you want it? Yes. Yes, I want it. Okay? When your life is on the line immediately, you'll take the experimental drug. Well, guess what? Pfizer is approved by the FDA now. So if you haven't had the chance to get it, now's the time. Most pharmacies have them available for walk-in appointments. There's no better time than now. Don't wait till winter.
Yep. And if you're somebody that's local to Cowlitz County and transportation is the obstacle that's preventing you from getting vaccinated, please contact one of us. I'm sure that we'd be happy to chauffeur under the conditions of masking and open windows. So that might also be weather.
Yeah, definitely. And also,
related.
I have resources that can provide rides and whatnot.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm. Cool. Well, I think we should end it there.
Cool.
all right.
Thanks for tuning in to the RATScast.
RATScast number 6.
Holy moly.
We were outside. You heard the eagles cawing and crowing and scaring other animals into movement.
There were 3. It was pretty cool.
We didn't hear. Hold on, we're not done, unless we're doing another one because our video game deputy. Did you even say a single word during this?
Yes.
I think
exactly
it's time for Dylan's dish.
No, okay, yeah, here's the dish. I felt like I shouldn't be at this table, at this conversation, just because I am the complacency. I am the apathy. When Joffrey said, like, is there any hope? And, like, that's kind of how I'm feeling. Like, sure, we could try to get good people into things. I just saw a Facebook meme saying, here's people living to paycheck, here's landlords, here's the government.
I saw that.
That meme, and everyone in the comment section is saying, oh, the rich are getting richer, poor are getting poorer. Everyone's saying whatever the hell they want. Where is the action? I don't see it happening, and just like you said, who actually has the bravery if there is a rise up? And so I just felt like sitting here listening to this, I had nothing to add that was going to be constructive. Unfortunately, I am so much of the other population where I am the apathy. I am the, it's all fucked, guys. The hope we have is that the world isn't probably going to end while we're alive. It'll be the next generation's problem.
Yeah.
Great.
And I totally understand that and vibe with that. You know, I have to like struggle to find the hope, but like I do think it's just what keeps us going. So, you know, but like, yeah,
Ain't nobody
I
gonna bring it to
become
you.
so cynical, so jaded, so distrusting. Like, I'm even at the point now where, like, this is going to get really weird, especially because I'm saying this for the first time in front of John Eric, but like, I don't really find humans attractive anymore because I need to know if they are anti-vax and a Trump supporter before I can even decide if I'm going to interact with them at all. Like, sorry, dropped a bomb, but that's what's going on with me right now.
Yeah,
Like-
no, it makes sense because if you see a red hat, you know, if I see a red hat in the distance, my heart rate automatically goes up because I view them as a racist traitor, whether it's a MAGA hat or not. I have to get close enough to figure out if it's a MAGA hat or not before I can settle down.
And if I see somebody in a public indoor space without a mask on, I know where they stand, and I'm not interested in being around them at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep my distance. I'll give them a wide berth.
They're dangerous. They are domestic terrorists. They are literally more dangerous than any school shooter or any building bomber or any airplane flyer that has happened in our lifetimes plus. They are the most dangerous threat to the future of America. And we need to start treating them as such.
Yeah, it's just scary. I'm scared. Like, I'm fucking scared. But, you know, then I think of, like, all, you know, the books, the series that we read growing up. And it's like, if we identified with the protagonists in these stories, then we know what we have to do. But it doesn't make it any less fucking scary. Like,
Here's my GoFundMe to get me out of the country. Because
Yeah.
apparently I'm a
Yeah.
communist. But
No,
one of the
no.
things that I'm thinking is China made it something that they were mandating. And now over in Oregon, you can't be outside without a mask. The governor made it a finable offense to be in a public place outdoors.
Yep.
And people are calling her a communist and pushing back. That
That's not
is a
communism.
way to try to mitigate people's freedom. And that's why I'm saying it's not quite terrorism without the intention. However, I'm not sure I want people to have the freedom to just go ahead and kill the world. So maybe here's GoFundMe.
robust
Send me money.
mask
Let's get me out of the country. I'm a communist. I'll
Oh.
start a PayPal.
And
No,
I have
now,
definitely-
communism. That's not communism. Is an economic system in which the workers own the means of production.
They're using it as an umbrella
I
effect
know,
for
but every
anything
time,
they
every
want
time
to.
I get a chance to say it, maybe one of them will hear.
Right. And they equate, I didn't say that right, but whatever, communism to socialism, and they're absolutely two
Those are
different,
different.
again, economic systems.
And they equate both of them to totalitarianism, which is a style of government, which is, again, that's different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So should we end it there then?
I don't know. I don't know. Because, like, even like my own feelings about everything are so unresolved. It's like, do we, take that stand and fight and try to, go out in the name of true democracy? Or do we try to get into Canada now while it's like more feasible?
Right. Are the borders open again now?
I think it's limited. I'm sure that we'd have to show vaccination cards and take a test and stuff, but
Yeah.
yeah. But the Canada housing market is just as crazy as here.
It's worse.
Yeah. What's that?
Sweden is one of the countries that is pushing hard to mandate it, and they've got an average of 7 cases per day. So, I mean, that's still where it's mandated. You should do it. Look at America.
Remember, of course, at the beginning of this, Sweden said, oh, we're going to get herd immunity by just letting it spread. And then almost immediately said, oh shit, please don't do what we were trying everybody else, okay? But, the people who are making their arguments are going to point to what the Sweden did the first time and say, yeah, but they changed their minds and they were willing to. That's the thing.
Yeah, and, there's definitely an anti-mask, anti-vax community in any country. So, I think that's worth mentioning,
There are evangelicals in Sweden.
Yeah, and Australia.
Yeah.
There have been big protests there. France. So, this isn't exclusive to the United States, but I think that there are a higher population of anti-vax, anti-mask people here, perhaps because we have more freedom. But at the same time, when I look at other developed countries with like universal health care and stuff, I'm like, if there's less freedoms, I would still happily take it. I can not post as much shit on Facebook. I'm cool with that.
But I don't think that's a problem in like Germany. Although Germany has a pretty strict law about giving the Heil salute. That's a big no-no. Whereas in America, people just do it because it's your freedom of speech.
Yeah. Oh, and fascism is also on the rise globally as well. So, I think that this more so boils down to the human condition and what humans all end up like arcing towards. And so maybe we shouldn't...
Well, not everybody's arcing the same way,
no.
so that's good.
Right. Absolutely. But
Fear is a powerful drug, right? And that's what fascism is built upon, which fear. And that's what RATS was really established to combat fear. And the way to combat fear is to learn about reality. Because the more you know, the more you realize you don't know anything, which makes you want to learn more. And the more you learn, the more you understand being afraid of stuff is not the answer.